Hello, this is Peter Merrick. I'm so excited. I'm speaking with a really good friend of mine, Dr. Charlene Coon. She is a world expert in cybersecurity. She has a PhD in cybersecurity from Colorado Technical University. She's worked for almost every government agency and she has top clearance. We're going to be talking about how Dr. Coon is applying her vast experience to help third world countries become first world nations, offering opportunity to their young. And really, that's what it's all about, the next generation. Dr. Coon is also the president of the World Business Development Association. It is located in Mozambique, and if you don't know where that is, go to a map. It's in Africa. And also Pentagon Cyber Inc., which is located in Utah. Dr. Coon, Charlene, thank you for joining me, and I'm very excited, and I feel honored that you're spending this time with me to talk about cybersecurity and also the projects, which I believe are very important, happening in Africa, specifically in Mozambique.
Absolutely, Peter. I always enjoy speaking with you and love your insights and the effort you have done to help World Business Development Agency and your involvement in promoting us and championing us. And absolutely, I absolutely love this opportunity to sit here and chat and talk about what's happening and some world events that are going on and their impact. And you bet, no problem, any day.
Well, Charlene, it's so unfair that you and I have such fun when we have our conversations that
Right?
we're not taping them
Right.
and sharing them with people, because you have a vast array of knowledge, most importantly experience, that's transitioned into you having lots of wisdom, specifically with cyber security. So just share with us, like, how did you get involved in cybersecurity? Because it seems like when people think about it, it's like there's spies trying to break into networks, there's criminals, there's all sorts of things, and you've had such a vast experience. Can you share with us your story, how you got into cybersecurity? And you're a world expert, like you got a PhD in cybersecurity. You're the first person I ever met who had a PhD in cybersecurity.
Right, there aren't a lot of us. So oh my gosh, it's been such a transition in life. I started out years ago becoming very involved with like politics. I was the previous life, I was the vice president for a chain of health clinics. And I would fly into Washington, D.C. all the time to talk to congressmen and senators about different pieces of legislation, how that was impacting our clients. So I became very addicted to this. A person can make a difference if a person is willing to speak up. And then my husband graduated and got his first job in technology. And I'm like, hold up, he's making more than I am. And I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to transition. So I transitioned into IT and went from being vice president to help desk person. But I'm like, I'm making this transition. I'm going to do it. I'm going to, bite the bullet and, learn from the ground up. Quickly, I took that job quickly. 6 months later, got a huge offer. At that point, way back in 2008, it was like for $40,000, and just 6 months into doing IT, and then over the years have repeatedly upped my salary offerings. Currently, now own my own company. I have had the pleasure to work for the FBI, working like really heart-wrenching and cases that when you work for the FBI, you you're given a piece of yourself
Yeah.
to protect people, and working cases where I worked, when I first worked for them, I was the digital forensic examiner.
What
And
is that?
digital forensic examiners, you're investigating crime, anything digital involved in a crime, and almost any crime now involves some type of digital evidence. Either someone is communicating on their phone, or we've got cameras capturing data, or there's stuff on servers, wherever. If it's digital and it has something to do with a crime, your social media that you're putting out there. So we're gathering anything that someone may have put up involved in a crime and taking it all and then putting together the pieces. We're recovering items that if you think it's deleted, you know, you're probably wrong. I can typically crack into any system. I've never seen a system that I could not crack into. Data we recover, you know, we're recovering stuff frequently that's, you know, from the first day you got your computer that you think you deleted and you think got written over. It's not. One case that I worked, without going into a whole bunch of details, teams had worked on for 10 years, trying to gather enough criminal evidence to put some really bad guys away in an international crime ring. And they had worked diligently for 10 years. And they had finally obtained some digital evidence. And in the location they were at, they weren't able to recover anything. So they sent it to our location. Two of the, they were original, from the original class of FBI about 20 years ago now, that had that first cohort of graduates from the FBI digital forensics training, took the evidence, tried looking at it, and I just happened to be a little bit more obstinate, pig-headed, and determined. And I'm like, I'm not going to give up. And then so I asked them, I said, could I please look at that? And I painstakingly took the evidence, went through it, did tons of recovery. And one of the agents kept telling me, he's like, you know, a lot of that, what you're gathering is circumstantial. He goes, it's not going to mean anything. And I said, if I gather enough of it and I piece it all together into a story, watch me take all these little pieces to tell a story. And I did. I got enough evidence to get 13 of this criminal ring indicted. The location that it came from, they called me back and they're like, we would like to erect a statue in your name. And I'm like, just the thought is enough. I says, I absolutely love putting criminals away. And because protecting people, not enough people are willing to do it. And to when you work for the FBI, you not just the FBI, but many other organizations, you give away a piece of yourself to be able to do that. And
what do you mean by that? A piece of you?
So you have to decide, are you going to continue to live in a safe place for yourself, both emotionally and physically? Or are you going to go to places that are emotionally very disturbing for yourself?
Right.
And how is that going to affect you? And how is that going to affect how you interact with people, including your own family? And you watch the FBI agent after agent make that choice that somebody has to fight the bad people. Somebody has to pay that price. If we all pretend we don't see it, it's not gonna change. Many of the cases that I worked had to deal with child trafficking, child sex trafficking, just heart-wrenching cases that, and even at the FBI, you have the opportunity to walk away from those. You can say, I won't do those type of cases. You have to acknowledge that you understand what you're going to be dealing with, and decide that you're willing to expose yourself to put some bad people away. So
so it's soul work, because you know what you're doing is moral.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so how difficult it is, you know what you're doing is right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you know what I really enjoy about speaking with you, Charlene, is you're very light, and the fact that you're always laughing when we're talking. And has that come about and matured into you because you've seen such darkness?
I would say yes. It is when I spend a lot of my time championing people that have experienced very difficult things in their life, whether it is trauma or whether it is life circumstances, to tell them that it's okay. Bring that experience with you. Bring it with you, because it means something. For me, a lot of what I was homeless when I was little. My mother did not always make the best choices. And those experiences, that background, growing up in poor neighborhoods, growing up in neighborhoods where there's gang fights, and I bring that with me.
Yes.
And that is why Mozambique, I hear, reached out to me because they were looking for
You're a crusader.
Yes, they were looking for somebody that just wasn't going to go do the job, but had a heart and the humanitarian side of helping countries that are struggling, where you're not going to make the top dollar.
Let's focus, Charlene.
Yeah.
Let's focus on Mozambique. How you're working with Mozambique right now, and you happen to be the president of World Business Development Association, and it is located in Mozambique. And you've taken your skills from working with the FBI, working in cybersecurity, and now what you're doing is you're going into these developing countries, and you're working with them to actually raise their cybersecurity and bring them into parallel with first world nations. And share with me how you got involved with Mozambique.
Okay, so I used to work on the U.S. nuclear program. I had been doing that. I would probably be considered their top cybersecurity consultant. I was in charge of the team doing the final check.
What does that mean? Can I just ask?
Sure. So it's called IVMV, so Independent Validation and Verification. And so our team, or our program, it was our job to do the final check of nuclear code. Is it safe? Is it secure?
You mean the football? Are you talking about the football?
I don't know what you mean by the football.
That's what they call like the little case that the president carries that he can put in the codes. Is that what you're talking about? The football?
So all nuclear, all the critical nuclear code, launch code on many, many different devices. So whether you're talking aerial or ground, or if it was involved in So yes, it would involve, I would suppose, the FET-ball too. So any of that launch sequence type stuff, and it's not just that. You have many pieces that have to interact on many different
Right.
types of launch abilities. So I did that, and I had friends that used to do consulting for the Pentagon.
Yes.
And Mozambique has a gentleman that does pen testing for them. And him and the gentleman at the Pentagon had worked together many times, briefing in the Pentagon. So Mozambique asked them, do you know somebody? And they're like, we know exactly who you want to talk to. She is one of the top cybersecurity people and in the world, and that she also has a huge humanitarian side on her. So, you know, unlike a lot of people, they're going to go, yeah, no, that's not going to be super profitable. Um,
Yes.
I'm going to tell people it is absolutely the best profit in the universe, because you are changing the trajectory of nations. You're changing the
Yes.
trajectory of businesses. You're changing the trajectory of lives. Um, and so they first reached out to me and said, hey, you know, would you like to have a conversation with us about cybersecurity? You know, we have had terrorists going after our infrastructure, and we hear that you might just be willing to help us. You know, Pentagon Cyber, you know, would you guys like to come over here? And so we started talking. And as we talked, one of the first things I told them is I do not want to go in and just as a company solve the problem. I said, I can go in, we can go in a 5-year contract. We can help you with all your government systems. And it also has a layer of helping businesses. So we're helping government nationally and business nationally look at their cybersecurity. And I said, we could go in, we could do the work. But I said, I would prefer to go in and make sure that when we're done, one, that you have your Mozambique has the proper skill set, the proper people trained. And this is these efforts are frequently funded with loans from like World Bank. USAID is one of those entities that is part of that World Bank group. Frequently, these type of efforts globally are funded by loans. Most people think they're grants. No, they're usually loans that that country has to pay back. And so if I went in as a corporation, like many corporations do, as an awardee to start working on a contract, and I go, sure, I'll go in and I'll go do the work, and then I leave, I've just left that country, if I have not done it responsibly, left them with a huge debt. Sure, I solved the problem, but I didn't do it in a way that they can now pay back the loan. So I said, let's talk about this. Let's make sure that when we come in, that we are creating an environment that is going to provide education for your citizens. It is going to provide a revenue for your country to be able to then pay back that loan and reinvest into Mozambique. And so our conversations, and we are still in conversations, none of this is set. I've just spent the last 2.5 months in Mozambique speaking to different leaders in the country. Next week, I have an appointment to speak to the ambassador of Mozambique in DC. Last week, it was the US Embassy reached out, and they're like, hey, we hear that you would like to, that you're coming into Mozambique and you're willing to help. It was their commercial department reached out and said, let's have a conversation and figure out how we can help. So there's lots of stuff still in work. We do not have a contract in place, but we have lots of conversations going. And with Mozambique, what we are proposing, we would like to bring in hopefully 2 data centers, 3 call centers, the infrastructure to support those. So you need power, you need bandwidth, and then use those as training centers for to train Mozambique citizens. And all of the I've talked to dozens and dozens and dozens of companies that are willing to come in and participate. And I've told every single one of them, you're not going to make a deep profit, but you are going to make the potential to make a wide profit, because we've already had 6 other countries. We don't know who's advertising, we're not, because we're still launching over there. And but 6 other countries have said, hey, we heard you're talking to Mozambique, could you talk to us too? And we're like,
Yes.
absolutely. Whatever we are successful in Mozambique as, absolutely, we plan on duplicating it and helping other countries. The call centers and data centers, using them as training facilities. We plan on working with universities globally. I've already started reaching out to governors, to universities, to PTAs, to make sure this is an education effort. And with the universities, have universities tear apart everything we're doing and look at it and say, okay, how can we change this into a research project so that we can use research dollars? Because frequently you can get R&D dollars that are in grants, not loans. And if we can get the world involved in making a difference and then help duplicate that around the world to other countries that are struggling, then we have all won. Part of what we're doing, one of the research projects is Mozambique has very intelligent people. I have spent the last 2.5 months over there having many conversations, from the homeless on the streets, to the middle class, to the elite. And absolutely, they have not spent their lives playing on their screens, watching TV. They have used their minds, and they are, I have spoken to many of them, and they're spitting off details about things. And I'm like, you remembered all of that. I'm like, okay. I think you have us stumped. We've become too used to our technologies.
I agree.
And oh my goodness, so what I want to do, because not being able to read or write, a lot of their citizens cannot read and write, because their choices were go earn some money or go to school and starve. That is a reality there that needs changed. And I would like to hire illiterate people that are very bright, very intelligent, have very high IQs, that just did not have the opportunity to go to school. With modern technology, we can use that to use technology to translate automatically live between different languages. We can use technology. We do it every day on our phones. We say, hey, I need information on blah, blah, blah. And it gives us the information. We can have that read to us. We can find ways to help change the next generation, employ the current generation that is illiterate, so that the children can go to school, so that we change this cycle. That is one of the research projects I want to go on. And in all these conversations, I spend this split world between job development, so for world business development, and then Pentagon cyber. I can absolutely tell you, I am a cyber addict. I started.
What does that mean? What does that mean to you when you say you are a cyber addict?
Oh my goodness. So I love what I do. Absolutely. I'm just lucky enough that people pay me to do it. And, besides the years ago, when I first said, oh yeah, I want to go into IT. And then I was like, ooh, cyber. I went into cyber and I started working for the FBI. And then I served in a position that would be like the interim national site security director for the 2020 census. So anything that had to do with, we were bringing up 18 18-ish call centers and the 4 data centers that they worked with. So they had always been, knocking on the door in paper. And when I first started working there, it was like, oh my goodness, they had no idea what cybersecurity was. it was an education process, but we got it down. And I spent the whole 2020. I had to leave early because I have a security clearance and you can only work 2 years before you lose it. So I had to leave early, and then they pulled in the national site security director and then his assistant to help do that. And so I got to watch the final pieces of that from away, and the whole time they're like, don't get hacked, and we didn't. I was like, okay, we're good.
So I've got a question. I just have a question to ask. So, and if you're not comfortable talking about these things, like looking at the things that been in the news as of recently, especially cybersecurity, you're like someone who has a really good informed opinion. For example, people were having issues with the 2020 election, and we're coming up to the 2022 election. And I'm Canadian, and our elections, we're not allowed to have any elections using electronic voting. It has to be, I go in, I give them proof of who I am with my address, and I take a piece of paper and I cross it. It's a requirement. So as a Canadian, I find it it's very basic, it's primitive, but it's verifiable. And you can't really manipulate it unless they burn up the boxes. So unfortunately, Justin Trudeau is the Prime Minister of Canada because it is, is a multi-party parliament, and he has the majority, and he has majority making up a minority government, but he got paper ballots and he's the Prime Minister of Canada, and there's really no doubt on that. But the question is, when you look at what's about to happen and you say that you're a cyber geek, what questions do you ask that just you're asking that maybe the regular person like me doesn't have those questions formulated, because I just haven't spent a lifetime asking those questions that you do just naturally.
Right. When I can say there are so many instances in cybersecurity where you would hope the people that were supposed to be doing their jobs were doing their jobs. And they're not. They're not. There are many that are, but there are enough that are not. And that affects either they're not doing it because they don't know how to do it. They haven't received the real proper training, or they are apathetic, or criminal.
Right.
They fall into those 3 categories, and there's no perfect answer.
You mentioned something. I think there's a really good contrast between what you saw in Mozambique and what you see in our Western society, is that we are lazy, right? Like, we are corruptible. We lack drive for reaching as best as we can to perfection. And you saw when you shared that they're bright, part of that brightness is that hunger. Something that you don't see with a lot of people in the West. I know my grandparents, when they came to North America, they were hungry.
Absolutely.
And they didn't have and they had no social net, so they had to be hungry or they would starve.
Absolutely. The huge difference that I call the Mozambique citizens gems. Mozambique is known for having gems up in the mines, the gold, the mines, the gems, the oil, the gold. It's their citizens. And likewise in other countries where people are hungry to be successful, they are hungry to make a difference, they're the hidden secret. And I plan on telling their story because, as you said, many of us in more developed countries have become lazy. We've become apathetic, and we've become rude to each other
and corruptible too,
and
because
corrupt. Yep. And so I think giving these other countries that going back to Mozambique, it was like going back to socially the way we treated each other, like 1970s, 1980s. Polite, kind, courteous, professional. When the world finds out that you can go find polite, kind, courteous, professional, hardworking, and intelligent people, and you're not going to have to deal with the drama that we find in so many workplaces right now and in society.
So you didn't find any letters there?
Define letters. Define letters.
You know how you can get a letter for whatever your choice is in life. Like right now, there happens to be like 50 letters that people can have. I'm trying to be politically correct when I actually talk about
Okay, so I would say no. I found, in Mozambique, there is a divide. There's a divide between the haves and the have-nots, and that divide has nothing to do with color. It was surprising to me that regardless of someone's color, that there was a definite, here, like in the US where I'm from, you get more of a slope. You get the haves, the mostly haves, that, you get a nice slope in economy. In Mozambique, you're getting more of a V-shaped, and it is a definite have and have not. And watching that divide in social interaction in neighborhoods, in very much so, that, and seeing people that have so much ignoring those that don't have, it's like, how do I help that? And I think part of it might be just feeling overwhelmed. Like, how do I help one person? If I help one person, how do I, so a lot of it could just be trying to protect themselves and isolate themselves because they don't know how to help.
right.
They don't know how to engage, not.
And that's where that's where teaching them to fish rather than give them fish. And
Yes.
the way that you've explained it so appropriately, they're not even giving them the fish to eat. They're lending the money for the fish, and they're expecting to get the money back for the fish.
Yes.
And they end up getting nothing. After eating it, there's nothing.
They're in debt because now they have to pay for the fish, and they don't have the economy and the skill sets to pay that back.
So it's, I'm going to make a value judgment, like the World Bank and the IMF, when they lend money, it's almost like turning it in, it's modern day slavery for countries when they lend them that money and they don't have the ability to pay it back because they don't have the human capital, hasn't been properly trained to build a tax base. And it's almost, there's a corruption that goes on because it's almost a way of washing money, right? I send it there and it immediately comes back. There was a study that was done years ago, and I remember reading it. If you take $100 and you spend it in the poorest part of town, it will end up in the richest part of town within a 24-hour period.
And that's what I saw. And I'm not so sure it's corruption as much as nobody's taking it. I think me walking in as an outsider and watching it, I think too many people are used to what's in place and how things are done. And they're like, well, that's how we do things. And I I have started to have conversations with political leaders about what I saw, and about adding a simple thing like adding a clause to, so like if World Bank or the World Bank Group, one of those is like USAID, like if they are to loan money to usually it's countries, if they are to loan money to a country, and then that country gets the money, and then they hire contractors to do the work, and those contractors are frequently external to the country. And so a lot of that money does exactly what you say. It ends up going back out of the country because it's income for the companies coming in. And the company is absolutely, you know, I absolutely could have gone in and said, yes, let me fix all of your cybersecurity stuff. Okay, we're done. We did our job. And there would be no ill intent in that. It is a broken piece that is missing. When I think when those contracts go into place, there needs to be a clause that says, in the majority of instances, there are some exceptions, such as natural disaster or plagues or something going on, but in the majority of these aid funded borrowed money, there should be a clause that requires whoever does the work on those, whoever is the subcontractor, contractor that does the work, has a moral responsibility, or ethical responsibility, to make sure that what they're doing, that they can viably prove that their activity is going to generate revenue to pay back that loan. I want a clause added. I want that clause added to all of these pieces, because I could have gone in and just said, okay, let's fix your cybersecurity. Absolutely believe those doing the work should get paid for what they're doing. But my solution was to making sure that we were bringing in, not just fixing their systems,
Right.
but creating that training environment, making sure the training environment was going to leave something permanent for them, that they can get an income, bring in international dollars in to then help pay off those loans.
So Charlene, what is your drive for taking your expertise, which is very American centric, to bringing it to the world? Is it a legacy project? Like, what is it that really drives you? Because you've had such an extensive career. Like, I'm just going to repeat, you worked for the FBI, and you worked on pedophile rings. You've also worked on nuclear codes, and probably like things that you're not even privy to tell me. Those are the things you can tell me. It's like the other things you're not even privileged to tell me. So what is it? Like it's legacy. There's a saying that make the world better than you found it. Is that a drive right now? Because
it is. I tell people all the time, I hate watching TV. I hate wasting my time. I absolutely love what I do. And years ago, that the healthcare, the chain of healthcare clinics that brought me on and invited me as a very young mom to be a member of their board. And I learned in that experience that a person that speaks up and takes action can have a huge impact on the world. So I have a very hard time just going, okay, I've done enough. You know, I'm going to watch TV here. I'm going to go vacation in Hawaii. By the way, I own a home in Hawaii, so I'd really like to vacation there, at least for a few weeks. But to just, for me to be able to turn my head and say, I don't know how to help. I can't do that. You know, and I tell people all the time, I says, I may screw up, I may mess up, I may not know how to do this perfectly, but I'm going to start down that path, because if somebody doesn't make the choice to make the difference or to try, then we're not going to get there. So I'm going to do it messy. I'm going to make mistakes, but I allow that in people that I work with too, and companies that I
Right.
work with too. It's like, let's stop pretending we're all perfect, and
Yes.
go do something together. And so it's not really a legacy for me. It is me helping create legacies for people and companies and countries. It is about them. Like, I currently have, I've had offers for Bloomberg magazine to get an article in there. CIO Review, they reached out and said, Pentagon Cybers made the list of the top 20 promising cybersecurity companies for 2022. We'd like to offer an article to you and some news. They like to, they're smart. They offer 24 news announcements throughout the year. You can use 2 a month, because they know that you're making a little bit of rustle in the world, and they can help follow that rustle if they keep mentioning you and your company and what you're doing. And so twice a month. And I have told people, I don't want those to be about me. I want them to be about Mozambique, about changing the world, about the wonderful companies such as Wizio, Peter, that you are involved with. Wizio, in my conversations with people, has been huge.
Just want to share with people what Wizio is.
Please do. Please do.
It's a platform that courses are loaded up on, where people in different places of the world, specifically Mozambique and other places in Africa, where it's very low cost, where either the government is subsidizing it heavily or individuals are actually paying for courses that might be $25 for a cybersecurity course, where they're able to get access to someone such as Dr. Coon and her colleagues in that area. And right now, that's a key aspect of development of these countries as they develop their grids, because they need security of it, as they develop their banking. And many of these people, when you were traveling, you were probably seeing that they had more access to phones than we have in the West, like cell phones. They did leapfrog technology. They don't have lines. They just have, everyone has a cell phone with their banking and everything. And even the least educated person at least knows how to use their phone.
That one of the really cool things in getting this cybersecurity training out that Wizio's offering, I love how Kingsley is, I don't know if he's still doing the same thing, but how he was saying, I will upload your courses for free if you just if you just give me one that I can offer to low cost or no cost in to people that need it.
Well, the courses, we don't charge a fee to upload the courses, but what we ask for is one course is offered for free. And that came about, he was working in Kenya and Sierra Leone, and he noticed that there was this hunger for education and not enough access to internship and education, and also being able to get a job, especially since a lot of the good jobs in technology happen to be in the West. However, in the past, there was a geography issue, but now with technology, there isn't. But there's a technology.
That's what I'm telling the world. There should not be this geography issue. And oh my gosh, we are in a modern world. There is no reason why Africa should not be participating, and other low-income countries participating just as much in the technology boom as everyone else. If I can sit in my little hotel room in Mozambique and I am earning more in my volunteer time helping students. I do that as a volunteer to help an orphanage so I can send the funds, the cybersecurity students learning. I encourage them. And I take that little bit of money in because I don't like watching TV and I send it to the orphanage. I made more in my volunteer time in one evening than my hostess that the manager that ran the hotel did in a month.
And
Internet
that's something.
connections there, technology's there.
On top of that, the work ethic,
the work is there.
And
Absolutely.
there's also a demographic dividend that we can't ignore, meaning that most of the world, the birth rate is less than replacement. And people who become older become less creative. They don't bring the novice effect. And
Absolutely.
right now we have so many young people in Africa who we need their energy, not just their intelligence, because there's a lot of intelligence, their energy. And that is something that we would be looking at, providing to people in the West and also in African countries, and that provide that platform. So I'm going to ask you 2 more questions before we go.
Well, I have one thing. So since it's on my cybersecurity radar, because I was just flying in airplanes. And I remember when I was doing my master's degree that we did this this review of this case where an airplane had been hacked and why the airplane had back. And there's been a recent story about airplanes being hacked again. And I've just been flying, to fly from the US to Africa, when you go over there, it's there or back, it's about a 33-hour flight. So you're doing like 3 different legs of your trip. And I know that there has been this recent, people are all, oh, what happened? How did they get hacked? Blah, blah, blah.
Well, these airports in the middle of the night were hacked about 2 days ago.
Yep. And people don't, a lot of people don't know that when I worked in research and development, I actually worked on the most elite systems in the world used by some of the most important people in the world. And my job was to make sure the cybersecurity on those was done appropriately. And when I was first hired on, it was a industry-wide. It's a matter of some people just don't know, haven't been trained appropriately, aren't curious enough, and you can guess at all different things that happen, but as to why things are or aren't. And I absolutely would say, I received award from the US president for my work on the systems that that would be involved in some of this. And but unfortunately I could only touch a small handful of systems that no one has a look at all pieces of that or what's going on. And it would be a real shame to, I remember, you remember when you were little, when hijackers of planes, and back then they were physical hijackers.
Yes.
They don't have to be physical anymore. And we need to make sure that that type of activity is not happening, not occurring. There's everyone needs to do better at cybersecurity. Corporations need to step up. They need to find a way to make sure that in the design of systems, the design of the air traffic control systems, the design of the communications on the airplanes, designs on whatever it is you're developing or making, that you invite that cybersecurity team in from your initial conversations. I was sitting in a cubicle one day and I had just been hired on at a company, and I'd been there about 6 months, and all of a sudden there were down at the end of the aisle in this group of cubicles, they were having a meeting. And all of a sudden I heard this, how did we get to this point? How can we be 2 years into this and not? And the conversation from there, it was, they had not invited the cybersecurity team into their design and their development, and this was for some airplanes, and you have little pieces that have to fit in very specific spots, and this little piece had an anti-tamper requirement on it, and there wasn't room for the anti-tamper piece because how they had designed the board. And it was a sad day. They were millions of dollars into this, and they realized they had to go back from start over. It was a great conversation for the cybersecurity team because we started getting invited to a lot more project launch and be on board, and not pulling us on 1 to 2 years after they're into these items. So it was a sad day, but a good one for cyber.
Well, I just want to leave it with this, Charlene. We're at Wizio. We're really proud that we're going to be loading up over 50 courses on cybersecurity that people from around the world, especially developing nations, will be able to access. And that is something that's how you and I first met, talking about the opportunity. And I want to thank you so much. And I want to thank you so much for bringing us in the opportunity in Mozambique.
Yes, absolutely. We are more than happy to. We are thrilled to have you there. You are going to make such a difference in what that nation needs. We've talked many times, Peter, about how we found each other, met each other, and repeatedly, I can tell you, on this project for World Business Development Association, we have continued to receive connections that just otherwise wouldn't make sense. That God is saying, I care about these people.
Yes.
The chance that you and I would have ever met, no.
There are, there's no conspiracies, but there's no coincidences. So in essence, we were meant to work with each other. Charlene, thank you so much for spending this hour with me and sharing with us a little about cybersecurity and what you're doing both in Mozambique and in the area of cybersecurity. And this is wonderful. Thank you so much. And I look forward to us continuing these dialogues and having, share our conversations.
Absolutely. We together are going to change that trajectory of families and nations. And I'm so excited every time I hear that Wizio has another country asking about your services and
thank you.
what you guys are doing. So I fully back what you're doing. So thank you, Peter, very much. Thank
you so much, Charlene. Thank you.
Okay.
And the greatest healer for anybody later on in life is to mentor younger people. And I find this all the time. I sit down with business owners all the time, and they always give me unsolicited advice because they want to share their knowledge, and it's really important.
Here with me is Peter Merrick,
president of MerrickWealth.com.
Peter is an income and capital enhancement consultant,
speaker and author.
He is also a
recognized expert in the world of succession planning.
Over 800 published articles and 3 industry textbooks.
He's a Canadian who joins us today from San Diego, California. Thanks for joining us.
So, Peter Merrick, tell us about you.
Well, I've been in the financial service industry since the end of 1991. I graduated during the recession. The baby boomers were in their positions, so there was no jobs. So the two businesses that opened up were the technology field and the financial field. It was the Wild West in both of them. So I had this brilliant idea, and I had a friend of mine, and we started talking, and I said, hey, how difficult would it be for us to get a mutual fund dealer license? Not difficult enough. Thank God for those 10 years, the market just went up. I would sit down and I would take somebody's entire life savings that they spent 15, 20 years accumulating it, this young kid who knew nothing about nothing, and I would go and just invest it, and luckily it went up because the markets were crazy in the 90s. It was a boom time. But in 2004, my life blew up. I almost went bankrupt, but I was very fortunate because there were very few CFPs at the time, but every university in Canada wanted to offer the CFP program, so I got recruited as a prof. And it was great. I was reading all the textbooks. I would call all the big publishers. And what I came to the conclusion was the succession planning was missing. One of the issues is there was very little talking beyond the accumulation stage. Like, how do you have a healthy life after you've done that? I also looked at demographics. At the turn of the 20th century, the average life expectancy in the West and North America was 43 years old. And people are dying at 83. No one ever lived to 83.
Well, so I always say that there's two financial plans. There's the financial one that we work on, and there's what you're going to do with all your time and that energy once you're done. And with this thing that they've been racing towards, they've hit it. But if they haven't thought about what they're going to do after or how they're going to feel validation for their existence, they just never stop. They just keep going.
Well, it's not anybody's fault because when people are young, they focus too much on doing. And later on in life, they have to focus on being. So I wrote my own textbooks because I thought it was very important to talk about how do you transition from the first half of life, which Carl Jung called it the morning, where you're accumulating, whether it's your ego, designations, education, houses. The second half is deconstruction, giving wisdom away, giving away my money, giving away my time, leaving a legacy.
So talk to me about that stage. What's the purposeful way or kind of the best practices, ways, or considerations for people to take when transitioning into that stage of life?
Well, one, decide whether or not you want an exit. I find between the ages of 55 and 70, a lot of people feel that I'm just tired doing the same thing that I've always done, and I have the money now. So maybe I should get out when the going is good and pass on my business to someone who's got the energy to navigate it. Number two, who are you going to sell your business to? There's one issue about selling it to a family member or an employee. What happens after you sell it? Things don't go right. A lot of business owners want to sell their business because they just want to wash their hands. But by selling it to someone you know, you're not getting out of your business. The best is to sell to a third-party purchaser. The last one is after they make that transition from being a business owner, building a nest egg for themselves to have choice, they don't know what they're going to do. I've spoken to people who say, I'm going to take up golf. So my question is, do you golf now? I don't golf now. So what makes you think you're going to golf later? I just want to share with you guys a story. There was a gentleman, his name was Bob Hunter. He was quite a celebrity. He started Greenpeace during the height of my blow up when I was going through business loss. He was bringing me on national television. And you know what he was doing? He was saying, so Peter, don't you do that? And then he would give my phone number and he would give my web address. The reason why I went by merrickwealth.com because it was almost like a phone number that would run across the television and I could actually see myself making money off of it. And he was dying. He had prostate cancer. And he turned to me and said, Peter, one day you will be in a position that you'll help someone else. And let me share with you about the legacy. Bob's been dead for 16 years. And I'm sharing you the legacy of Bob Hunter because he made a difference for me. And if I make a difference in anyone else's life, I'm a
product of those people who are willing to do things and they had no expectations. And a true mentor is someone who has no expectations that they're going to see the tree blossom.
The reason I wrote The King of Main Street is younger people don't know how to find the right mentors, and older people have this need to mentor. It's almost like a biological need because they can see beyond their physical existence. They know that the sun was here before them and it will be after them, and what's going to be left behind that they leave.
I would joke, I can't make you money, but I can definitely save you money. What I mean by that is I am a Sherpa. That's someone who would guide someone to help them come down. But I realize the most precious asset they have is not their money. It's their time.
What last piece of advice would you like to give our listeners?
If you have a business, the most important thing to ask yourself is, why did you get into the business? And it's usually not to create a legacy, it's to create the lifestyle that you want. And at that point, ask yourself, what do you want to do during your last days?
The last human freedom is to choose one's own beliefs, one's own way. Everything else you can have taken away from you. But what you believe and how you choose to act in the world, that is yours. And the greatest healer for anybody later on in life is to mentor younger people. And that is going to give you fulfillment emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. You guys have been wonderful, and I want to thank you, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you.